seems it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The pomp proceed as mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Soul, where tonight we're talking about polio, we're talking about injections, we're talking about the Spanish flu, just because we've been talking about hantavirus and some things that remind us of a few years ago. So it's nice to maybe drop back into some of that. So let's do it. Please go to roguesoul.org for everything I do, my books, my orgo, my classes, my one-on-one healing sessions, tarot, past life, sound healing, and more. It's all here on roguesoul.org. Always check out the favorite things tab as well. This is some friends and products that I use and affiliate links. And so if you use these links, get yourself some organic hemp from Organic Hemp Society. Awesome product. Also goes to help all veterans. Every time you buy something, an equal amount is given to a veteran for free. So really, really cool company, organization, and product here. Highest quality CBD. Love it. We've got the True Sidereal Astrology from Athen, chemical-free body, all kinds of good stuff. Everything here is stuff that I use, that I love. AquaCure as well. They're having a big sale right now. You can actually get a free water distiller and I think $250 off. If you want to get an AquaCure finally, if you haven't yet. Remember, this helped me heal in so many amazing ways miraculously. So I love George and all the work he does. Friend of the show, good product. Check it out. If you use the code ROGUEWAYS, it gives me a little affiliate boost. So help me out while helping yourself out. Get all this good, true, and beautiful stuff. And all my, again, books and services, all here, roguesoul.org. Also check out the things that I write on rogueways.substack.com. Good place to be subscribed. You can also subscribe at the paid level and get extra access to some of the channeled messages and content from the spiritual ancestors that has come through over the years. You get access to the entire archive as well. So check it out. And we do have a blessing. This is a new moon this Saturday. And so blessing for renewal, for courage, for embodied abundance. These blessings are always so high energy, so beautiful, so transformative. Very, very affordable way to get a deep dose. So I know a lot of people out there are not feeling so comfy with the money situation. So they're just kind of holding back a little bit. So if some of those other sessions that I offer and things I do are outside of your reach, that's how it feels right now, then this is the way to go. Powerful blessing. So I love being able to do these. And this one I was guided to offer to you all this Saturday. Remember, when you register, even if you can't come be with us live, you do get the link to the recording. No one else gets it, just the people who are registered. So anyone who registers gets the blessing, whether they can be with us live or not. Totally doable. So even if your Saturday is busy and that's not what you're going to be doing in the middle of the day, I get it, no worries. But you can still sign up. Another thing that guided to share is that you can also commit for other people. So if you know there's someone who needs this blessing, you can also register them and they'll get sent the email, they'll get sent the recording. So that's also something you can do. And some people love to do that because it's a nice way to support, especially when our family or friends are recovering from something or they're going through it. It's a nice way to support them. So that's this Saturday, New Moon Blessing. Check it out on the Substack post. If you're subscribed at Substack, you already know, because I do like to let you all know about events and things as they're coming. So that's there for you too. You can read more about it or sign up. And we'll go here. This is Victor Scott. He seems like a very cool guy. He's on Twitter, of course, X. He's a software developer with hobbies of working out, learning about health, root causes of illness, and natural remedies. Got a good amount of followers, and he's always posting pretty high quality research, well thought out, things that they're kind of outside the mainstream. So I'll just say once for this whole episode, I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose you. I definitely won't prescribe anything for you. And nothing I say here is meant to do any of those things. When I talk about this stuff, I talk about what I do for myself. And I'm also supposed to say that you and your your doctor are the ones who should decide what's best for you. So Victor Scott says, we don't kill each other through the air. If people knew this in 1918, what is your excuse? Read these quotes from Eleanor McBean. She lived through the, quote, Spanish flu, and her family understood this fallacy. So remember, this is what we're told, and this is what we were told during COVID, is that it's airborne. It's traveling through the air, this killer, this menace, and it's going to get you. And it's coming from all of your other cohort, your human cohort. They're the ones who are a virus, a plague upon this earth. They're carrying this death around, and they're just spewing it at you by breathing, right? That's what we're told. He's saying, no, that's not the case. And in fact, ever since vaccines were introduced, ever since a long time ago, there are people who have understood this. So Eleanor Bean, he quotes saying, when I see people cringe when someone near them sneezes or coughs, I wonder how long it will take them to find out that they can't catch it, whatever it is. The only way they can get a disease is to develop it themselves by wrong eating, drinking, smoking, or doing some other things which cause internal poisoning and lowered vitality. So this is, again, early sort of terrain theory. It wasn't called that, it was just this understanding that if you have a healthy body and a healthy constitution and you're doing healthy things, that you're in general going to be healthy. And there might be the errand, the rat fell into the pudding and now you're eating rat and you get sick, right? There's definitely bacteria and there's these things, but they come from very specific contagious vectors. And generally you have to be ingesting this in order for it to do anything, right? And they maybe didn't have at that time this understanding. We'll get into more too of the electromagnetic side of things, but definitely this is what we would call terrain theory, but way back then. She goes on to say, when the flu, the Spanish flu of 1918, was at its peak, all the stores were closed, as well as the schools, businesses, even the hospital, as the doctors and nurses had been vaccinated too and were down with the flu. So here's where we start to see she knows these injections, these vaccines might actually cause illness. She's seeing it happen, right? She says no one was on the streets. It was like a ghost town. We seemed to be the only family which didn't get the flu. So my parents went from house to house doing what they could to look after the sick, as it was impossible to get a doctor then. If it were possible for germs, bacteria, virus, or bacilli to cause disease, they had plenty of opportunity to attack my parents when they were spending many hours a day in the sick rooms. But they didn't get the flu, and they didn't bring any germs home to attack us children and cause anything. None of our family had the flu, not even a sniffle, and it was in the winter with deep snow on the ground. So she's describing all the things that you would say, this is a perfect vector. Your parents are going into the house of the diseased in their closed quarters and all of their saturated linens of all the goo that's been coming out of the sweat and the snot, and they're just fine. And then they're taking it back to their children, but the children are just fine. And she's saying the only difference between us and these people are we weren't vaccinated. That's the difference, right? Very interesting. So she says that pandemic dragged on for 2 years, kept alive with the addition of more poison drugs administered by the doctors who tried to suppress the symptoms. And that's interesting too. Ever since I was a very young child, I would not take aspirin and Tylenol when I had a fever because something in me knew the fever is good for you. The fever is happening for a reason, and it's burning off the bacteria or the dead cells or whatever it is that is attacking your body otherwise, so that it can get rid of those things. Why would you stop the fever? This is when I'm like 5 years old. I was like, I don't understand what you guys don't get about this, So they were frustrated. They're like, man, this girl won't take medicine. Yeah, most medicines, we know that it's not a controversial thing to say. Most medicines are to suppress a symptom. They're not to cure the root cause of why you're having this illness or this disease. So she's seeing that at that time too. She says, as far as I could find out, the flu hit only the vaccinated. Those who had refused the shots escaped the flu. My family had refused all the vaccinations, so we remained well all the time. We knew from the health teachings of Graham, Trail, Tilden, and others, so these are doctors and scientists of the time, that people cannot contaminate the body with poisons without causing disease. So they knew these medicines are poison, essentially, and you're contaminating your body when you take them, just like you would be with alcohol or rat poop, right? You're just poisoning the body and you're going to have disease then. And, there's this whole idea, and homeopathy gets into that, where like a tiny bit of the poison is actually can perhaps be very good for you. But that's not what pharmaceuticals are. They're high doses of something meant to essentially suppress a symptom. So always causing side effects. I mean, that's why there's inserts in every vaccine. There's inserts in every medicine. There's long lists of side effects. And, we've come to just accept that, like, oh, some people are just weak and they're going to have a side effect. And we don't then think, well, isn't it interesting, though, that this medicine causes the same side effect in all of these people? By the way, those are often far underreported, as we've talked about before. That's also not a controversial statement. That's what all scientists, doctors accept, that the number of adverse reactions is actually vastly misunderreported. So we know that this is causing illness. We know they're causing illness, and we still do it anyway. Take this thing. It'll make you sicker, but it'll maybe make the thing that's bothering you now less. That's a really weird thing to do. And no one in our modern medical system is trying to get to the root of any of it. What caused the cancer? What caused the nerve degeneration? What caused the mental or emotional disturbance? What's at the root? You can say, I'm mentally and emotionally unwell, and they'll give you a medicine. They won't try to stop the fact that you were abused by your parents your whole life or try to heal that. It was like, oh, just take this drug, cover over it. So we're in a very, very different place of how we think about our bodies, how we think about healing and wellness. So she goes on to say, all the doctors and people who were living at the time of the 1918 Spanish influenza epidemic say it was the most terrible disease the world has ever had. Strong men, hale and hearty, one day would be dead the next. The disease had the characteristics of the Black Death added to typhoid, diphtheria, pneumonia, smallpox, paralysis, and all the diseases that people had been vaccinated with immediately following World War I. Practically the entire population had been injected or seeded with a dozen or more diseases or toxic serums. When all those doctor-made diseases started breaking out all at once, it was tragic. So she's connecting. She's saying all of a sudden we had all these vaccines come on, and then right after that we had this mass death, flu. What is flu? Flu is your body trying to get rid of the things that are ready to go. The old tissues, the bacteria, the poisons, anything that's toxic in your system is now being purged. You're being purged out of any orifice you have potentially, and also all the pores on your skin. You're sweating it out, crying it out, all the other things I won't list. So your body's getting rid of it. It's a massive purge of toxins. That's what any of these illnesses are. And the breakdown of cells and the breakdown of the way the body works on the way is also part of what we see as any given symptom set, right? And so we're not doing a very good job still. This is over 100 years later, even understanding that. And the delusion is so deep that you can't even question this idea of what the body's actually doing, what is illness, how do we actually, heal and cure at the root instead of just mass symptoms? Are pharmaceuticals and vaccines not actually healthy for you? Are they harming people? You're not even allowed to ask any of these questions, even though they're perfectly good questions and have not been answered. They haven't been answered. I mean, I've answered them. Lots of people have answered them, but to the scientific community and the culture's, level of desire, no, these have not been answered. But you're still not allowed to question it. Well, that doesn't make sense. Now you're in a cult. If you can't question something, you're indoctrinated, you're not allowed to think about it, you're in a cult. And people will abuse you to keep you in that cult. By the way, if you haven't noticed, someone the other day threatened my mother. They don't know my mother, they don't know me, but I said something disagreeing with them on the topic of some medication or another in a vast open public forum. And they took the time to track me down, find my contact information, email me, and threaten my mother. That's how crazy these people are. They're in a cult. You can't even question. You're not even in their cult. And they'll try to hurt you and your family for thinking something different than them. That's crazy. You're a crazy person. So here's a book by Eleanor McBean that was just being quoted from. It's The Poisoned Needle, Genocide, the Spanish Flu Deliberately Caused by Vaccines. And so you can check that out. There's another idea of what caused the Spanish flu as well, and we'll get to that, but that's one of the books that you might want to check out if you're interested in this kind of thing. And I always say, it doesn't hurt you to think. So even if you think you don't agree with this, well, then you have every reason to read it. Right? Oh, I don't agree with that. Well, then it can't hurt you. You already know it's false, right? So who cares? Might as well read it. Find out, why do people think this, right? That's how I've always looked at life. So here, Victor Scott again shares a Spanish flu was started by vaccines and perpetuated by even worse vaccines. So all these vaccines came on the market, all these different things she listed, diphtheria, typhoid, all that had a vaccine. Everybody's getting all these vaccines at once. And then all of a sudden we had this flu. And then they said, oh, now we have a vaccine for that. And then that just kept it going longer, right? Oh, where do we see that recently? So even then, he says some knew that deadly diseases were not passed person to person through the air. They didn't panic, they didn't get vaccinated, and they were fine. Again, you can argue all you want that it's passed through fluids as well, and toxins definitely can be. If you go take some LSD, you're going to be sweating it out of your skin. And if you start touching someone, they're going to be absorbing it through their skin and they're going to get what we call a contact high. So, shedding of vaccines and that sort of thing, it can come out of you and it can definitely affect other people. We have actually never proven that viruses can do that. We've never proven that viruses can transmit through touch or through anything. We've proved bacteria can. We've proved that parasites can. We've proved, the other toxins, again, can. But we've never proved that for viruses, ever once, ever, 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 never. Nobody believes that because it sounds crazy, but you go look for it. You can't find it. Now you'll find a bunch of studies done since 2020 that attempt to pretend that they have proven that. And if you read how they actually attempt to pretend they have, they still haven't. They haven't actually ever in the history of humanity taken spit or snot or a goo or anything for viral transmission and put it in another person and seen that the disease then is caused. Never once. You take that wherever you want, but that's just true. So he shares this sort of short film that goes through some of the different old pictures and images of this Spanish flu. Very interesting. Again, another quote from Ellie McBean. It was a common expression during the war that more soldiers were killed by vaccine shots than by shots from enemy guns. Back then, they knew that. Remember, we see history through this lens of what was chosen to be printed, whether it was true or not, and then what was chosen to be collected and put into the, official, like, here's the history of this time by the winners, by the people in power. And then that's what we take as gospel. Well, you can look now at the headlines and say, well, that one's not true and that one's not true and this is not even remotely true. But is that going to end up in a history book? I'm not going to be in the history book, probably. They don't like me, so I'm not going to be there, right? My ideas aren't going to be there, but all of those false headlines probably are going to be. So people at the time knew, but that's not what's in the history book. That's not what we get to talk about. Just like right now, you're not allowed to talk about certain things or your mother will get threatened, right? So she knew, maybe, and when we see the death tolls from those wars, is it from war or is it from vaccines? Here's the compulsory vaccination happening when my dad was in the military. He also talked about that and how sad and horrible it was to just watch everyone get forced vaccinated. You don't have a choice. The U.S. Army records show that 7 men dropped dead after being vaccinated, right in that same campaign we're seeing them inject with right here. A report from U.S. Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson not only verified these deaths, but also stated that there had been 63 deaths and 28,000 cases of hepatitis as a direct result of yellow fever vaccination during only 6 months of the war. That's huge numbers, especially back then. This is a report from U.S. Secretary of War. This isn't some random person. It's not just a conspiracy theorist. It's a dude whose job is to be exceptionally rational and report the details of what occurred under his command. And people act like this stuff is just fringe, and it's not. It's just made to seem so. And so we have that too. Here's the many hospitals full of the Spanish flu victims or maybe vaccine victims. Army records also reveal that after vaccination became compulsory in the U.S. Army, not only did typhoid increase rapidly, but all other vaccinal diseases increased at an alarming rate. So there's what other proof do you want? This population that hadn't been vaccinated and then was forced to uniformly, no exceptions, had these huge increases in the exact diseases they were supposed to be preventing. Come on. And it's interesting to me because, again, what's actually causing the disease? Is it a virus? We don't have evidence of that, but at least a toxin. And people always say, well, then how is it following the same, series of first you get the fever and then you get this and here's how it presents. How is it doing that if it's not a virus? A toxin does that too. A bacteria does that too. A parasite does that too. Radiation sickness does that too. There's a ton of things that aren't viruses that do that too. So it's not a good argument. Viruses might exist. We just don't have proof. The report of the Surgeon General of the U.S. Army shows that during 1917, there were 19,000 men admitted into the Army hospitals suffering from anti-typhoid inoculation from vaccination. These are not hidden things, right? They call these the side effects, or they call these the like, well, somebody might die or somebody might get sick. You're making them sick. They were fine and you made them sick. The Army doctors knew all these cases of disease and death were due to vaccination, were honest enough to admit it in their medical reports. They weren't yet trained to hide it. When doctors tried to suppress the symptoms of typhoid with a stronger vaccine, caused a worse form of typhoid, which they named paratyphoid, and then concentrated a stronger and more deadly vaccine to suppress that one and created an even worse disease. So this is all documented in the Army records. And you can see it. The doctors didn't want this massive vaccine disease blunder to reflect on them, so they agreed among themselves to call it Spanish influenza, distancing themselves from any scandal or blame. After the war, this was one of the vaccines used in a vain attempt to protect a panic-stricken world from the soldiers returning from World War I battlefronts infected with dangerous diseases. So again, people are like, well, you can follow the outbreak and it travels with the people. That doesn't mean anything, really, right? If you're then also vaccinating people as those people arrive, there's your vector, right? The only ones who would ultimately escape the influenza were those who refused the vaccinations. And there was a pretty strong anti-vaccination movement, and people who wouldn't go along, people who wouldn't wear masks and the like, even back here. And so no different from our recent experiences. Medical historians have finally come to the reluctant conclusion that the Great Flu epidemic of 1918 was solely attributable to the widespread use of vaccines. Again, medical historians, not current medical students or doctors or nurses or any of those people. They maybe don't have a chance, but medical historians who have the opportunity to be more honest admit this. It was the first war in which vaccination was compulsory for all servicemen. 47 soldiers had been killed by vaccination in 1 month alone of this campaign. So very interesting little short sort of film there from Victor Scott as well. We have also, you can get Eleanor McBean, who is a doctor and maybe a naturopathic doctor as well, it looks like. You can get her 1977 book, Swine Flu Expose, for free online, probably from archive.org, also here from whale.to. You can find it from Victor Scott's Twitter post as well. He links to it. This is all here for you. So you can check it out yourself. You can read all the documents. You can read all that they've gathered here into this book. Very, very telling. We also have her earlier 1957 book, The Poisoned Needle, specifically about vaccines and the harm they do. Again, medical doctor. So interesting books there to check out for sure. Definitely can't hurt you to learn. And we also have here from a modern, this is from 2020, actually, good timing, right in June of 2020, from Medium, the spread of Spanish flu was never experimentally confirmed. Perhaps, is a quote here, if we've learned anything, it is that we are not quite sure what we know about the disease. Yes, recently we could say the same things. We have never confirmed how COVID spread, what it actually is. And definitely we haven't confirmed that an injection for it was effective at all in any way, but we have confirmed that there's been massive increases in the population who took those injections of turbo cancers, they're calling them, and all sorts of other maladies. I have personal friends whose the rest of their life is ruined. They've got Guillain-Barré and other side effects from injections, much higher than in any other injection in modern history. Not only because coronaviruses can't be vaccinated against, never have been able to be, and that's why they never had one before, but also because there's this experimental technology in them of the mRNA, which is modified, not messenger RNA. There's tons of people who still don't even know any of that, and none of that is even debatable. That's just true. It's just objectively true. You can still like it and inject yourself all you want. Nobody's going to stop you. And it's true. It's the most deadly injection that we've seen in the modern world. I don't know actually if it's deadlier than the 1918 one, 'cause I'm not up on the comparison there, but pretty bad. So he just goes through these studies. And here's one is a landmark study of Milton Rosenau experiments to determine the mode of spread of influenza in 1919, in which they isolated microbial mixtures from the throat and noses of carefully selected influenza cases from an outbreak location. The researchers then administered these 10 young US Navy volunteers without prior exposure to influenza, and none fell sick. They drew blood from influenza patients and transferred it to the Navy volunteers. None fell sick. They collected influenza patients' mucous membranes with swabs and filtered them to exclude larger microbes like bacteria. They then injected the filtrate into the Navy volunteers. None fell sick. They brought the Navy volunteers to meet influenza patients. They shook hands, they conversed. Patients exhaled as hard as possible into the volunteers' faces for 5 times. Then the patients coughed directly into the volunteers' mouths. None fell sick. This is just like we were just reading from Eleanor McBean. Her parents, who didn't get a vaccine, were going right into the bedrooms, taking close contact care of neighbors and friends, being the help they could in this challenging time, never got sick. So that's one study in which they show that. There's actually every study in which they have directly tried to take any kind of fluids from a sick person with a viral infection, what we're told is viral, and inject it or put it or place it into the bodies or bloodstreams or whatever of anybody, they don't get sick. But they'll tell you, you're going to get sick. You're going to get sick for sure. It's just going to come out the air at you and you're going to get sick. They don't actually know that. They have not even a small amount of evidence that that's true. Not even the tiniest bit of evidence. It's a delusion. It's a commonly held delusion that we've been indoctrinated with, and studies don't bear it out. And these people say they love science. I love science. I've always loved science. These people don't seem to love science. They seem to like whatever will be presented as science and confirm for them what they already believe. That's what they actually like. So a really good book that I always am pushing is The Invisible Rainbow. It's fantastic. Arthur Furstenberg, another book that can't hurt you by touching it or reading it. Maybe a paper cut, fair warning, but it can't hurt your brain, can't hurt your heart. It's just information, and a very fascinating, super detailed, well-documented, especially exceptionally researched book. Arthur Furstenberg collects all these documents and all of these essential proofs that viruses are not what makes people sick, that bacteria can make you sick, that toxins can make you sick, right? And that electromagnetism can make you sick. Electromagnetism can make you sick. And he goes through and documents. So again, we talked about maybe the Spanish flu is caused by injections. Maybe the Spanish flu was caused by I think it was telegraph poles, or I don't remember what was happening right then, but he documents every pandemic we've ever had. We also have this coinciding uptick in electromagnetism, and it's either from things like the telegraph or like electricity in general, or it's from the sun, Carrington events and whatnot, and people get sick. And we know radiation sickness is a thing, and we know that all of these electromagnetic spectrums cause damage to biology. That's not contestable. That is absolute objective fact. And so to ask yourself, is this why people get sick? It's a good question. And then to notice that at the same time that we saw our last supposed pandemic, 5G rolled out, a new wavelength for the body contend with, and that every other wavelength we've rolled out in history has also caused mass sickness and or death, both in humans and in animal populations. Documentable. So is that why people were sick? You want to call it a virus? Feel free. I've got more evidence that it was something else. I've got more evidence that perhaps it was electromagnetic. And so maybe not. Maybe viruses are the thing and they transmit, and we just can't get them to do it right in front of us because they're shy. They only want to do it when we're not looking. Maybe electromagnetics have nothing to do with the electricity in your body. You're an electric being and you have an electromagnetic field. Maybe those things don't matter. But it's a great book, Invisible Rainbow. Check it out. And we have here too this document from archive.gov. Did disease decline because of vaccines? Not according to history. And this goes through all these documented cases of diseases being in sharp decline before vaccines came out. And then if vaccines came out, there's often an uptick in that same disease. So what actually causes diseases to go away? Well, almost 100% of them are connected to better sanitation, and the rest of them tend to be connected to a chemical being used nearby that is no longer used. The chemical goes away and the sickness goes away too. And polio is one of those. And we can show polio declining massively, almost eradicated. And then the vaccine comes out and they take credit for it, but it was already leaving. So what actually causes diseases to go away? Doesn't seem to be medicines from the pharmaceutical companies, doesn't seem to be injections, allegedly. And one last thing I'll just show you here on rogueways.substack.com. If you're subscribed and you have been for a while, you've probably seen this document already. If you're newer to it, you might want to check it out. This is a list of sources that only come from high quality sources. So they come from .gov, they come from the Supreme Court, they come from official studies, all of these things. So there's not a single document that I connect to on here that isn't from an official high quality source, the CDC, Health and Human Services, on and on and on. And 100% of them prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that injections actually cause harm and that we cannot prove any good that they have ever done, ever. So if you're interested in that, can't hurt you. Can't even give you a paper cut because it's digital. So check it out if you're into it. Question some things if you haven't before, and then ask yourself again, like we've been talking about with the potential hantavirus, whatever it might happen, that what you actually want to do is make sure your body is always as healthy as can be, that you're always giving it the highest quality, like foods and liquids and happiness, right? And healed heart and a healed mind and stress-free as much as possible, grounding on the earth, getting some natural sunlight outside of the hours of power in the early morning and the late evening, you know, spending time in nature. All these things keep you healthy and well. And if I can support you in any way, you can book with me at calendly.com/rogueways. It's right below wherever you're watching or listening. Come to the blessing this Saturday. It's another way to keep healthy, allegedly. I don't know what I'm allowed to say legally, but I feel healthier when I do that. So receive this big, beautiful, powerful blessing. And until then, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Glued to them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The pomp proceeded mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.